Happy New Year. Glad you were here. Good morning. If you're out in the foyer, make your way on in. Let's get started. Let's stand and worship together. There's a place where I love to run and play. There's a place where I sing new songs of praise. Dancing with my Father God in fields of praise. Dancing with my Father God in fields of praise. There's a place where I lose myself in Him. There's a place where I find myself again. Dancing with my Father God in fields of praise. Dancing with my Father God in fields of praise. There's a place where religion finally dies. There's a place where I lose my selfish pride. Dancing with my Father God in fields of praise. Dancing with my Father God in fields of praise. Dancing with my Father God in fields of praise. Dancing with my Father God in fields of praise. I love my Father loves me. I dance for my Father sings over me. I love my Father loves me. I dance for my Father sings over me. Nothing can take that away from me. Nothing can take that away from me. There's a place where religion finally dies. There's a place where I lose my selfish pride. Dancing with my Father God in fields of praise. Dancing with my Father God in fields of praise. Dancing with my Father God in fields of praise. Dancing with my Father God in fields of praise. All right, good job, church. Good morning. We're so glad you chose to worship with us this morning, and this is when we want everybody to feel welcome. So say hello to a neighbor, shake a hand.
Good morning, Magnolia Bible Church. So that video was about a ministry that we have at our church called Re-Engage. Re-Engage is designed to be an encouragement and help for married couples. We've had a number of our families in our church go through it. It's just a blessing to them. Joel and Amy, who headed up, kind of at the end take a survey of how the course has impacted their marriage. And they have them rate their marriage on a scale of 1 to 10 before and after. And on average, the couples that go through it say their marriage has increased in quality on a scale of 1 to 10 by 3 points, 3 to 4 points. And so if they had a 5, they'll walk out and saying we had a 9. And if they had a 3, they'll walk out saying we've got an 8 or 7. And so would love to have you guys get some more information about it. We have a table in the foyer. There's a video there. Joel and Amy are there. Would love to have you go and get involved in it. We actually want all of the families in our church ultimately to go through this. And so get some information. There's some in the foyer. You can sign up for the class online at magnolia.church, and we'd just love to have you be a part of that. I want to, first of all, just let you know that I am angry and upset with all of you. And just know it, feel the rage. I am a Bills fan. I have always been a Bills fan. I will always be a Bills fan. And it was either I was happy and you were mad, or you were happy and I was mad, and the football gods got it wrong. And I thought about pulling video from the greatest comeback of all time and putting that up this morning just to make it even, but nonetheless. And then I feel good because I love living here, and so now I can root for Houston going forward, which I will do, but, And so if you were wondering about my general state of well-being yesterday, it was on the verge of stress. But you will, my children will tell you, because they think I'm ridiculous, I've seen this before. Like, if you are not from Buffalo, you do not understand, although Houstonians are pretty close, you do not understand how skilled we are as a city at pulling defeat from the jaws of victory. It's just like, how can we lose again? And apparently 3rd and 18 is how we can lose again. If you're a guest here today, you'll have to forgive me for my anger. And we have a gift for you, actually, for our guests. We'd like to give you a Bible, put your name on it and print it on it, and just provide that for you and any member of your family. Just take the connection card that's in the bulletin, put your name printed very carefully, and then a contact information. We'll call you, confirm spellings, and then let you know when they're ready. There's no cost to it. It's just a gift from our church to you to pour into your family. And so if you would like one, we will make them for you and have them for you soon. We've been announcing, but a couple of time changes of some ministries that we've got. Our Celebrate Recovery ministry is moving from Wednesday to Monday night, so tomorrow night they'll meet in the garage, so that's a change. And then also our student ministry, all of our student ministry is starting at 6:30 through 8:30 now. And so starting at 6 o'clock, we'll open the doors. Registration is the same place. We'll have a meal and everything, but the entire program is going to be from 6:30 through 8:30. We had this, Michelle and I got to spend a couple of days with Pastor Matt Cohen and his wife Jessica. They were down in town. They're going to be their first Sunday here, a new worship pastor. Their first Sunday here is going to be January the 26th. They're in town. They've got their house. They've started moving some of the stuff in. Actually, Jessica interviewed for a job, and it looks like she's going to have a job, which we've been praying for. And then we're also praying that their house sells. They actually have a showing later today. So just keep praying for them. Actually, I think they're neighbors, right? Of Marcia, their neighbors. And by the way, he's going to give your boys a hard time for watching him move his stuff in and not helping. And so that's going to go on for years and years. What'd you say? You've already told him that yeah. He said, those guys were watching me move my stuff, and I didn't know who they were. And John, you're in so much trouble. forever. You were at work? You were leaving for work. Yeah. Who said that? That was pretty good. All right. Our men's Bible study is starting up later this week. Guys, we're going to do the Bible study Courageous. If you want to know what makes Magnolia Bible Church unique in our men's ministry, you need to be a part of it. We start at 6:30. There's a meal. 7 o'clock, we'll start our study. Guys, come join us, be a part of what God's doing here. And there's information about that in the Welcome Center on the table to my right, your left. And would love to have you be a part of that this Thursday evening, 6:30. Church, I want to kind of have an awkward conversation with you, and we just want to kind of do a little bit of kind of crowd business, I guess. After last Sunday, and these are strange conversations to have as a church, but I just want to have this kind of publicly with you. Last Sunday morning in Dallas, somebody walked into a church and went to this church service and then got up to act, and a couple of church members were killed, and then he was killed. I want to just kind of talk about that with you as a crowd, because when you don't often get video of these kind of things, and there is a video of it, and you get to watch it, you get to see what happened inside the audience, and you kind of learn some different things really about audience behavior and really everybody's behavior involved. Let me just kind of walk through a couple of ideas with you. First of all, we have an active security team at our church. You may see them, you may not know them. They are all around our campus, and they train monthly to work. They actually train some with local law enforcement. They train on their own. If you ever drive past this church on like a Friday morning or a Saturday morning and see 5 or 6 cop cars in the or more in the parking lot, it's because we actually invite our local SWAT, to come through our building and practice inside our building so that they're used to our campus and used to what it looks like, and work with some of our security guys. On a typical Sunday morning, there's almost never a Sunday morning where we do not have an active duty police officer that is inside our service. I do have a couple of things about that event that I want to talk about. First of all, I love the fact that we have the right and privilege to have and hold guns, and we are not dependent on someone else to defend us, that we can actually take action to defend ourselves. And personally, I think you should vote in such a way as to support people who will ensure that we have guns. That whole event last Sunday lasted 6.1 seconds. Typically, on a national scale, response time for a police call is 9 minutes. So that event was 6 seconds, and typically 9 minutes. And so it was incumbent upon, and it's the beauty of that church was active and had a security team, much like we have one, and prevented really what could have been a much larger disaster. The audience did a couple of things that I thought was really interesting that I want to talk to you about. First of all, the audience, when the first shot went, the audience went down and then kind of popped back up again, curious. And so if something happens, please don't pop back up again. Just stay down until you hear an all clear. Because what happened is, as the security team people were walking through the audience, they actually had times where an active security guy was walking with his gun out, and people inside the church were up in front of his gun, which would be a disaster. So if something happens like that, we want you to get down and stay down until you hear an all clear. Please don't get up and run out of the room. That happened also. Please don't do something like that, because it's very confusing, as you can imagine, what's happening. And if something is happening over here and someone jumps up and runs out a door while somebody else is trying to run in a door, that can be really, really complex. We know a lot of people that carry guns inside our service, and we're glad that you do, and you're welcome to do that. If you are not on our security team, I would kind of coach you, although saying this to a Texan is a little difficult. I would just warn you, I guess, that if you pop up and you decide you're going to do something, that could turn out very badly very quickly. And then let me also say that if you have a gun and there is something that has happened, and when that is over and you hear the all clear, you need to be certain that you put that gun away. Because what is going to happen is the police are going to show up, and if you have a gun, they're going to shoot you. And so put the gun away. They do not ask questions like we would ask questions. They just figure it out a little bit later. And so those are the kind of the simple things that you're going to do. Don't run, push the kids down, hold them down, and stay down until you hear an all clear. There's a couple other things that happen that I want to talk to you about audience behavior. The bad guy, showed up with a giant wig, a beard, and a large overcoat. Now our guys know, and they're trained and they're authorized from the elders that those people are not, someone that does that is not allowed to stay inside our service. If they dress up like that, we're going to ask them to leave. And you also should feel free if you see someone who's not that they have a beard or something like that or they look gruff, but they obviously are presenting themselves in a disguise to get someone and to make sure that that person is identified, and we'll make sure that that person isn't allowed inside our church and inside our service. And let me tell you one other thing, because it's sometimes things are confusing to an audience, and there's something that I do in my marriage that I've never done. I guess I don't do in my marriage. I've never done this. I don't ever scare my wife. I never do that. I tease her, but I don't scare her. Like a lot of times I'll come home late and it'll be dark outside. I never tap on a window or something like that outside. I never do that. I never stand behind a door and as she's coming around the door, pop out and say boo and watch her fall over. I never ever do stuff like that because I want her to know that if something like that is happening, it's not me. So she doesn't ever have to wonder whether or not this is a dangerous situation and be slow to respond. She would immediately know if she saw an unpresented figure outside, it's not a safe situation. And so for you as a church, we will never surprise you from the audience to the stage. It just won't happen. We don't do it. We don't write it into our programming. We won't write it into our programming. Some churches have done things where the pastor dresses up kind of like a street person and sits out to see whether or not the people are going to be kind to him. I will never do that. I will never do that. I never want you to wonder whether or not something is a real situation or not. If something is outside the norm, it's because it's wrong. If someone is rushing the stage, it is not part of any program. We will never write that into a program. You should never wonder to yourself, I wonder if that is real. It's not. So if somebody comes busting out of a door, we did not design that. If somebody comes flying in the back, if somebody stands up in the middle of the service and starts talking or moving towards the stage, we have not written that. We won't write that in so that you know what you're looking at, so that you know as an audience that you can act. For example, if someone is rushing the stage, usually these guys want to shoot the pastor, and so if someone's rushing the stage, feel free to tackle them, and that's fine. So there's just not a time that we're going to do something that is going to make you wonder, what's going on? We just won't. We don't write it in. We don't think about it. We don't plan it. We don't ever do that. And so if you hear something that is firecrackers, we don't use firecrackers. We don't do stuff like that. If you hear something, I wonder what that is. Just get down, and we'll give you an all clear, either from the stage or we'll give it from the sound booth. But we'll give you an all clear when everything's ready to get up and to move forward. And it's super strange that we have to have these conversations, but we live at a time where people try to identify soft targets. We just don't want to be that soft target, and we want to be active in taking care of our community of people and the enjoyment that we have in fellowship with each other. I want to open our service in prayer, church. We're going to pray for Bethel Baptist Church this morning, for Pastor Gary Snyder. Ask prayer for the physical health of their congregation. Church, let's open in a word of prayer. God, thanks for our chance to hang out together this morning. I pray for Bethel Baptist and pray that you would meet their service and meet them in a special way and bless them. And God, bless them physically as a number of people in their church are not well. God, thank you for the opportunity that we have as a church to gather this morning, to renew friendships, to tell story, to hear all about what you're doing in our lives as we engage people in our sphere of influence, as we have an opportunity to study your word and examine its pages and wrestle with text. God, I pray your Spirit would conform us more into the image of Christ. And God, as we have opportunity to sing praise to you, God, I pray for the spiritual need of every person that you have brought here today. That you would meet that need, that you would encourage our hearts, that you would be the object of our affection and devotion, and God, it would be something that we would be able to say that it was good to be in the house of the Lord. And so God, bless this service in Jesus' name, amen.
Thank you, Steve. Steve, I appreciate, in addition to speaking truth all the time on stage, I appreciate your willingness to talk about things that are uncomfortable like this. But let's, absolutely. Let's continue in our worship time, and let's stand, please.
God is able, He will never fail. He is Almighty God, greater than all we see, greater than all cross you beckon me, draw me gently to my knees, and I am lost for words, so lost in love. I'm sweetly broken, wholly surrendered. What a priceless gift, undeserved life have I been given, with Christ crucified. You called me out of death, you called me into life. I was under your wrath. Now through the cross I'm reconciled. At the cross you beckon me, draw me gently to my knees, and I am lost for words, so lost in love. I'm sweetly broken, wholly surrendered. At the cross you beckon me, draw me gently to my knees, and I am lost for words, so lost in love. I'm sweetly broken, wholly surrendered. In all of the cross I must confess, how wondrous your redeeming love, and how great is your faithfulness. At the cross you beckon me, draw me gently to my knees, and I am lost for words, so lost in love. I'm sweetly broken, wholly surrendered. At the cross you beckon me, draw me gently to my knees, and I am lost for words, so lost in love. I'm sweetly broken, wholly surrendered. Worthy of every song we could ever sing, worthy of all the praise we could ever bring, worthy of every breath we could ever breathe. We live for you. Jesus, the only one who could ever save. in you alone, and I will not be shaken. Holy, there is no one like you, there is none beside you. Open up my eyes in wonder, and show me who you are, and fill me with your heart, and lead me in your love to those around me. I will build my life upon your love. It is a firm foundation. I will put my trust in you alone, and I will not be shaken. I will build my life upon your love. It is a firm foundation. I will put my trust in you alone, and I will not be shaken.
Amen. Amen. You may be seated.
If you have your Bibles, if you would grab them and turn to Luke chapter 9. That's where we're going to be with our time together this morning, is in Luke chapter 9. It's quiet in here. Is it hot in here? Didn't I tell you last week to go to the early service? So if you're sitting next to somebody too close, then it's because you didn't go to the early service. Is that Catherine Malera? Are you here? Is that Catherine? You haven't had that baby yet? I can see you fanning yourself like, yeah, I could get why you're hot. Man, you were worried about it being a December baby. Maybe it'd be a February baby. I shouldn't have said that, should I? All right. Robert said, I liked it. He talks about uncomfortable things, and there we go. When's the baby due? Oh. You said, I don't want the baby to come early, and you didn't think about late. So, in our study through the book of Luke, we're kind of at this pivotal point. Again, Luke is writing this letter to a friend of his, kind of unpacking the story of Jesus. And he talked about the uniqueness of his birth, and he's kind of introduced some of the authority that he has and showed the uniqueness of his person. And then he kind of come to this moment in chapter 9, which is really this dramatic event where Jesus says to his disciples, who do people think that I am? And they say, they think you're a prophet, this. And then he says, who do you think that I am? And Peter says, you're the Messiah. Like for the reader, they're just like, whoa, wow. This is the person that God said would come as the payment for sin and allow us to have a relationship with God. And so this is like, jumps out of the page at a person. And then Jesus kind of unpacks the gospel right afterwards where he says, hey, that's true, and I'm going to go be rejected, die, I'm going to rise again. And the disciples can't quite figure that out. And then he goes into this next little section where he talks about where he gives basically this call to discipleship. And I want to talk about this call to discipleship. Some of you guys know a little bit about my upbringing story, like just my family, and I am one of 7 children. I am 6 of 7 children. I have a sister that's 4 years younger than I am, and I have 5 sisters and a brother. And we're spread all over the country, and just all kind of east from here, but kind of all over the country. And then I married into a large family as well. Michelle, my wife, is the oldest of 9, and she's obviously the oldest in her family, and I am near the bottom of my family. So we kind of have this unique dynamic where, I got to see all my older siblings grow and their lives develop. And then I've also got to see her family kind of develop and grow. She went to college. Her youngest brother was 2 years old. And so I got to kind of watch that whole family develop and grow, and then kind of do the same thing as my family did, kind of spread out all over the country, get married and have children. It's really been kind of an interesting dynamic and interesting stories as we've kind of watched people develop and people mature and people grow. And what's really interesting is there's no correlation when it comes to life experience, or there's no correlation when it comes to something like how their marriages are working. There's no correlation between like personality and all that stuff to our siblings functioning as an adult. Like some of my siblings, we kind of run this wild gamut of people that are non-functioning adults, and the same in Michelle's family. They kind of run this gamut of non-functioning adults, and some are doing really well and functioning really well and have great homes, and their kids are doing really well, and then others, it's just like, what in the world? And people ask, and maybe you've asked this question or had this question asked, how is it possible for kids to grow up in the exact same environment, grow up and become adults, and live completely, vastly, wildly different lives? Like, how is that possible? Has anybody ever asked or been asked that kind of a question? So I want to talk about that this morning. I want to wrestle with that this morning. And I want to kind of boil it down, and I want to explain it in very simple. It's not simple to do, it's simple to talk about. It's not simple to do, but I want to explain it in very simple terms, and I want us to personalize it, because like the difference between a fully functioning life and a completely messed up, broken life is really is philosophically quite simple. And Jesus is going to address that, and he's going to deal with this, not that answer, but he's going to kind of introduce the idea of what kind of life that we lead will lead to something that's functioning. And how does that work? How is it like it's not, I've seen thousands and thousands of marriages and I've seen marriages that are wildly unique. I've seen people that were married in their teens and then people that got married in their 40s. I've seen people that are separated by almost, sometimes more than 20 years in age. I've seen people that are born in completely different countries get married. I've seen people that come from different ethnic backgrounds, and sometimes they don't have the same birth language. I've seen that. I've seen people get married from completely different faith structures, and then some of them work great, and some of them are just awful. And you keep working at them and trying to tweak and trying to fix it, but it never really adjusts. And there's a reason why that happens. And there's a reason why some teenagers develop into adults that they're just a delight as young adults, and then as regular adults. They're just a delight. And then there's others that it's just work. You're just like hoping, and you're just like, maybe they're going to grow up. And then, they get into some stuff that's marginally legal, and then you're just like, oh no. And they kind of had this life direction, and then you're just like, as a interested party, it's like you're holding on to a runaway car, and it's just like, wow, when is this going to stop? Like, what's the difference between this and this? What's the difference between a marriage that functions and a marriage that survives but is non-functioning? What's the difference between a student that grows and matures and does really well in life and someone that grows and then just collapses and their life structure just does not work? So we're going to talk about that from our text this morning, and I'm going to try to lay out for you what it looks like to build a life that works from what Jesus says in his call to discipleship here in Luke chapter 9. So Luke chapter 9, starting at verse 23. Again, right before that, he just told his disciples, Peter just said, "You're the Christ, you're the Messiah," and he just told them that he's going to be rejected and killed and raised from the dead. And then he says to the larger group of disciples, verse 23, "And he said to all, if anyone would come after me, let him deny himself and take up his cross daily and follow me." And so just kind of breaking that out. If anyone, and this call is very non-specific. It's open. It's an open invitation. There's nothing special about it. There's no personality profile. There's no economic profile. There's no IQ analysis. There's none of that. It's just open up to humanity. It is as, it's like when you told your kid, go get the thing from the garage. Like, how do they know? It's anything. And then that's what this is. It's anyone. So it's you. So it's you, it's your marriage, it's your home, it's your kids, it's your parents, it's you as a young person, it's you as a grandparent, it's you, it's me, it's anyone. If anyone would come after me, and the come is in the present tense, and it implies a consistent way of living. It's a consistency. So it's this consistent pursuit, this consistent following. So if anyone is going to follow me, if anyone's going to be my disciple, if anyone's going to do that, then he gives three statements, three simple requirements of a follower of Jesus, or three simple commands or rules for being this follower. If anyone would come after me, three requirements. 1, let him deny himself. 2, let him take up his cross daily, or daily take up his cross. And 3, let him follow me. And so let's break these three commands down. 1, let him deny himself. To deny is to refuse or restrain one's desire. And this is a personal command where we identify our own impulse, our own appetite, our own desire, our own self-interest, and then we restrain that self-interest. So anyone's going to follow me, let him deny himself. So he's denying self-ambition, self-desire, self-satisfaction, self-interest, self-promotion. And there is in this idea, there is an assumption that the person is aware of the interest. That is, they know what it is that they're after, that they want, and fully aware of what it is that they want, they choose by force of their own will to refrain themselves. So I want, but I'm not going to have. Jesus said, if you're going to come after me, you're going to follow me as a consistent story of your life, first you have to deny yourself. You have to know in your mind the self-interest that you're after. You have to know what that is and say, I'm not going to do that. Life will not function. Your marriage will not function if you don't have that capacity. It's not possible. It's not possible. You watch a marriage break down where one person decides to step out on the other person. It's because that person in their mind said, I have a desire, right? And then sets out to satisfy that desire. And chaos ensues. Jesus says, if you're going to come after me, number one, if you're going to come after me, you have to be able to identify what you're after, what your life is after, what the self-ambition of your life is. You have to identify that, and you have to restrain that, number one. Number two, you have to daily means that there's not something outside the scope of that time. You know people that are obnoxious and they say, well, I'm just having a bad day. Like maybe if they're grumpy because the Bills lost the day before, and so they're kind of excusing their behavior, like you guys probably will be next weekend. And, I take that back. And if not, the torture I'm going to get. And I do hope you win next week. But anyway, off of football. Back. So daily doesn't mean that I had a bad day, I'm tired, I don't feel well. It's a consistent, so take up your cross. So take up your cross. In the Bible context, you don't need to explain what that is. The audience, the reader, would immediately know, or the listener would immediately know what he's talking about. To take up your cross means to die. Crucifixion is a brutal death. So he's saying you're taking up your cross. That is, you're dying. That self-interest is so managed that it has no capacity to rise up again. It's dead. Daily. So daily, take up your cross, he says. That is, that there's nothing, there's no reservation, there's no holding back, there's no, I'm part of the way, I'm committing to this part of the way, but not totally. If you're going to come after me, it's deny yourself. That is, Jesus has a direction for my life, and I have a direction for my life. And without reservation, without kind of holding something in the bag, without any reservation, I'm daily going to take up my cross, and I'm going to follow, which is his third statement, follow Christ. I'm going to follow. He says, deny yourself, take up your cross, and follow me. To follow me is to mimic, When I was, I've told you this before. We had this giant garden when I was a kid, and my dad had one of those walk behind Troy-built lawnmowers, those or rototillers, the big red ones. You know what I'm talking about? They had the motor in the front and the wheels, and then you had the tines in the back. How many never put a garden in their life and had no idea the joys of a rototiller? Chop your toes off. Okay, so we know what we're talking about. And my dad would rototill the garden, and when he did, he would till each row twice. He would walk down the row the first time, and then on the way back, he would walk in the lane next to it so as to finish the garden, and there was not a single step in the entire garden. Anybody OCD like that here? Okay, we got some of those. Yeah. Now, I was a little kid. My dad never was like, but when he would rototill the garden, he walked with his feet like this. Like, I have no idea why he walked like that. But he would till the garden, and he would walk, and he would step his feet, and he would go in through the road, he would step his feet like this, like these big giant, like you don't really walk with your feet relatively straight. But my dad, and I would walk in the garden behind my dad in his big giant feet, and because it's tilled ground and it gets squished, these big giant feet and my little tiny feet, and I'm following the steps of my dad. My dad didn't drink alcohol, but he had a big beer glass, and he drank water at every meal. Now, in our home, the 7 kids, my mom, a little controlling, did not allow us to drink water at any meal. Never drank water, never drank anything at a meal growing up as a kid. And to this day, I can eat shoe leather without drinking anything. I just have that skill. So we were not allowed. Apparently, she didn't want 7 people spilling their drink all at the same time. So it makes a little bit of sense. But my dad had this big giant, what I thought was a kid, this big giant I didn't know it was a beer glass, but until I got older, but this big, giant beer glass, and he would fill that thing up with water, and then my dad would drink water. And I was just fascinated as a kid at how much water my dad could drink. And I thought to be big means to drink lots of water. And I'm telling you, to this day, you and I, we could get into a water drinking contest, and you would quit way before I was even started. I taught myself how to drink ridiculous amounts of water. And because that's what big people do, because that's what my dad did. And I wanted to be like my dad. And so I followed in what he did. And so when Jesus says, follow me, he means look at what I'm doing and mimic my behaviors. And so when we're talking about conflict resolution, we're talking about anger management, when we're talking about mental processing thoughts, and we're talking about ordering the designs and structure of our life, and we talk about all of those things, Jesus is saying, if any person, you, me, anyone, wants to come after me, there's three things. You have to say, I'm not going to live my life. I'm not going to pursue my self-ambition. Instead, I'm going to kill that. I'm going to let that die daily. That is, it's going to come back, I'm going to kill it. It's going to come back, I'm going to kill it. I'm not going to do that. Instead, I'm going to mimic Jesus. And then look at what he says. So, verse 24, for whoever, again, very nondescript, anyone, whoever would save his life, that is, who would set out to chase their own pursuit. Whoever would save his life, it doesn't work. They'll lose it. It's going to collapse. It doesn't work. But whoever would lose his life, that is, deny himself, take up his cross daily, follow me, lose his life, will, for my sake, will save it. For what does it profit? What benefit is it if he gains the whole world and loses or forfeits himself? Another gospel says loses his own soul, which implies that there's an eternal consequence. There's an eternal principle here. But here, this is what Luke is drawing, or Jesus is saying. You can structure and design your life, and you can pursue your own selfish ambition. And when you get to the end of it and you've satisfied your selfish ambition, you're going to turn around and you're going to look at a life, and it's not a life worth living, and it's not an eternity worth walking into, because you've pursued self-interest and self-desire, and the structure of that is just ruin. And we all know this. We all know this. So the young person grows up in a home. The mom and dad teaches them right and wrong. They become an adult, and they decide that they're going to start using destructive substances in their body, and they pursue that, and they satisfy their desire to get high and to escape or whatever they're pursuing, and they satisfy, and they get what it is that they're after. They get it all. Like, what happens to their life? Like, what does that look like in 10 or 15 years? What do they look like? Like, what happens to the structure of their life? To the guy who decides he chooses, well, I'm not going to be faithful to my wife, and then he starts over again. He chooses he's not going to do that again. He starts over, and he chooses he's not going to do that again, and then he just goes on and does, like, what life has he built? Like, what is there? So the difference between a great marriage and a disaster, the difference between a great marriage and an okay, the difference between a young person that flourishes and does well and one that just struggles is not temperament, it's not IQ, it's not personality, it's not luck. It's not because your parents were great or you had this wonderful foundation. It's because you figured out to deny yourself daily, to put to death the desires that send you a direction apart from Christ, and to mimic Jesus. That's it. That's it. So, like, tell me about, don't say it out loud, but tell me about your story. Like, tell me where you're at. Tell me, student, how you're getting along with your parents. Tell me how you're modeling denying yourself, daily taking up your cross, and mimicking Jesus in front of the brokenness of your mom and dad. And tell me, husband, tell me about how you're processing life with your wife. Tell me how you're doing with the complaints that hit your mind, how you're processing the complaints that hit your mind. Tell me how you're processing the temptations daily, the temptations that come into your mind. Tell me how you're processing those. And if you tell me how you're processing those, I can tell you what kind of life you're going to have. I can tell you what your marriage is going to look like. I can tell you how it all plays out. You're going to pursue yourself, and you're going to get it, and you'll have lost everything. Jesus says, if anyone, you can look at your story and you can say, well, my parents didn't send me to college. That's not what makes a good life. My parents didn't give me a good inheritance. These people, they had all the opportunity and all this wealth. That's not what makes a good life. Well, I didn't grow up in a perfect surroundings, and I didn't know my mom and dad. I didn't know home as structured. That's not what makes a good life. That's not a determining factor on whether or not you will succeed and your life will work well. How much money you make, what your intellect is, none of that stuff is a determining factor on whether or not you will do well as an adult, whether your life is good. It comes down to you. Like, I can't make this decision for my wife. She can't make this decision for me. You. Deny, restrain, restrict the selfish ambition to satisfy self-interest. Restrict it so much so that it has no capacity to rise again. That is, you die to yourself daily. And you follow the example of Jesus. This idea is filled throughout the New Testament. Paul, Peter writes in the epistles over and over and over again about the importance of dying to yourself. Paul says, Romans 6 and 7, know that our old self was crucified with him. Galatians chapter 5, verse 24, those who belong to Christ Jesus have crucified the flesh with its passions and desires. In chapter 6, verse 14, but far be it from me to boast except in the cross of our Lord Jesus Christ, by which the world has been crucified to me, and I to the world. So Jesus, in his call to discipleship, says, anyone would come after me, let him deny himself, take up his cross, and follow me. And I'm not old, but in my years of pastoring, I have never seen, ever, even close, I have never seen a bad marriage, not even close, where both parties denied themselves, took up their cross, and followed Jesus. I've never seen it. I've never even seen a marginally difficult environment where both partners denied themselves, took up their cross, and followed Jesus. I've never seen it go bad. I have only ever seen it go marvelously. Because you think about it, where's the nature of the conflict? Where is it going to come from? Where's the nature of the sin that's going to break down the communion? Where's the nature, what is going to ruin it? Make sense? Now, when I think about this kind of sermon, my thoughts go to how gifted I am at finding everybody else's problem. Does anyone else have that gift? Are you with me on that? You hear a sermon like this and you think, yeah, my marriage would be just fine if my spouse would die, but no, we won't go that, but die to self. If they would, right? Don't we always go there? Don't we always go to what somebody else needs to do? Like, this would be better if you would. My work environment would be better if you would. My attitude would be better if they would. I wouldn't be so if, right? We always go that direction. And Jesus says, if anyone would come after me, let him take up his cross daily and follow me. And he goes on, verse 26. In the Bible, there is no disconnect between, like logically, there's no disconnection between conversion and discipleship. We understand that there is a disconnect between those, but logically there's not. And it's assumed in Scripture that if you're going to trust Jesus, that you're going to follow him. That the two are together. They are not technically like the same words or something like that, but they're assumed to the audience. And so for whoever would be ashamed of me, in verse 26, of me and my words, of him will the Son of Man be ashamed when he comes in his glory and the glory of the Father and the holy angels. That is, Jesus is saying, like, there's no way that you're a disciple, a follower, a convert, and then would not follow me, and you would be ashamed, you would draw away from, you wouldn't do it. He's like, that's not what it means to be a Christian. That's not what that looks like. And he's referring to the final judgment here, in which there's an image here of Jesus in his glory and Jesus in his power. And although he's man, he's referring to his position as the second person in the Godhead, that he is eternal God and that he is ultimately our judge. And so he's referencing that and reminding us that we're going to give an account of ourselves to him one day. And he's saying, look, there's no logical consistency. If you're a follower of Jesus, then you would not be ashamed of him. Of course not. And if you're a follower of Jesus, what are you going to do? What are you going to do? You're going to deny yourself, our own selfish interest, our own selfish ambition, our own self-desire, deny ourselves. They say, I know I want that. I'm not going to do that. I'm going to die to self. That is, I'm going to so manage that impulse so that it has no power over me daily. And I'll follow Jesus. How many have ever seen a person walk with Christ for years and years and years and years and years, and then all of a sudden stop? And this great marriage is just like, how did that happen? How many have ever seen that happen before? Why? Were they lying the whole time? Is it fake? Is it not real? Nope. I'm sure it was real. What happened is they got to the daily part and stopped. You got a good marriage, good job. Do you know the difference between your marriage and in a year from now you're not sitting here anymore? The daily part. You got great teenagers. Teenagers, you love your mom and dad. Awesome. Do you know the difference between loving your mom and dad, being an upstanding person that's functioning well and doing well? The daily part. And you think, man, I'm never going to cheat on my spouse. Good for you. Do you know why you won't? It wasn't because you made some decision at an altar whatever years ago. It's the daily part. Every day, we die to that, and we follow Jesus. So the question is, where in your relationship, in your life, do you need to deny yourself and mimic Jesus? Where? And then go do that. That is the life. That's the best life. That's the best eternity. That's following Jesus. God, thanks for our chance to hang out together this morning, to crack this idea and wrestle with it. For sure, we have dealt in our lives, in our own personal lives, with chaos that has come because we choose to satisfy or pursue a lust of our own flesh and not to crucify the desires of our flesh for the purpose of living out godly lives. God, for sure, we've suffered from that, or we've seen in our own life, in our own extended families' lives, in the lives of our own kids or others. We've seen it, God, play out. And God, may we choose daily to crucify our flesh. That is to deny ourselves, our own self-interest, our own self-ambition, our own self-desire. God, teach us to deny that, to restrain that, for the purpose of modeling, mimicking, so that at home we're mimicking Jesus. So that in our marriages we're mimicking. God, we ask that you would take the offering that we're about to collect, and thank you that we can give it. We ask that you would use it here inside our church and the ministry that we have as we endeavor to engage this region with the gospel, and then also in the ministries and missionaries that we support that are doing work for the gospel. God, be honored with the faithfulness of our church
Thank you, Katrin, and thank you for starting your new year out right here at Magnolia Bible Church. Hope to see you again next week. Let's stand and go out with this final song.
Are many, they rise against me, but I will hold my ground. I will not fear the war, I will not fear the storm. My help is on the way, my help is on the way. Oh my God, He will not delay, my refuge and strength always.
Church, well, go out and have a wonderful day. You are dismissed. Help us stack chairs 8 high if you are able, please.